I have a whole bunch of apples, and this year I don't need any applesauce or any other apple product really. So I am going to juice them all, and I'm going to make hard cider. It has been, I think the last time I made it was in 2020. So right now I am just chopping up the apples to go into the juicer. I have used the whole apple cider press thing and grinder, but it really is just not very effective in getting all of the juice out of the apples. I've tried it a couple of times now and just never had very good luck. But I've always had great luck just putting it through the juicer. It takes a long time, but you literally get all of the juice out. So I have a nice pile of apples here, and I'm going to get it started juicing. However, one thing that just dawned on me is I really need to clean the bucket that the juice is going to go in, and I've not done that yet, so let's get that done. So this is most of my brewing equipment. Yeah, there's a lot in here. Okay. Oh, I didn't even need to get yeast. I went and bought yeast, and I didn't need to. Although I don't know how old this is, so it might not be good anymore. All right. So not only does all of this stuff need to be washed, but it needs to be sanitized as well. So, well, not all of it. I'm not using all of it today. Mostly I just need the bucket. So I'm going to get all this stuff out of here, and then we will wash the bucket. Funny enough, I think the thing that broke and is spilled all over down here is a bottle of hand sanitizer. That is not the appropriate type of sanitizer to use with this, but at least it's not something gross. It's not really necessary to wash the outside of this, but I might as well since I'm here. All right, so I am going to be using this Star San, which never quite works like I want it to. 1 ounce to 5 gallons, so you do not need very much of it. Because I'm not going to be putting 5 gallons in here. But the things that we need to sanitize are not only this, the spoon, our hydrometer? Yes, that is what it's called. Hydrometer. And that should be all that we need for this step. So, get some water in here. And all you have to do with this stuff is just dip it in. You do not have to rinse it even, which is great. So the other thing we need to do is, I haven't done this in a long time, so I need to look up how to do it. Wheat, barley, apple, full body. Need to wash and sort the apples, which has been done. And so we'll put the juice in here, which will be our primary fermenter, and we will add a Camden tab right away. Plus the sugar. All right, so we are going to, like I said, put the juice into this primary ferment. We'll put the Camden tab in and the sugar, mix that all up and wait 24 hours, and then it will go into its secondary ferment. So now that this is all sanitized, I'm just going to get the rest of them juiced. I'm only doing 30 pounds of apples, so I only expect to get maybe a gallon-ish of juice. So this is way overkill, but we are just going to keep at it. I have finished all of the Honeycrisp apples, which is what I had gotten. However, when you're making hard cider in particular, it's actually recommended to use kind of it's like almost a bitter apple. Like it has a little bit of a bitter aftertaste to it. So often crab apples, I looked it up a couple years ago. There's a whole bunch of different varieties that you can use for it. Of course, they're really difficult to get, especially in this area. And you can use any apple at all. However, we have a little crabapple tree. Its crab apples are tiny, but they actually have a nice, fairly sweet, like first flavor to them when you bite into them, and then they have that little bitter aftertaste. So I'm going to try juicing them and see if that works. They do need to get washed first, though. So I've only used those kind of recommended crab apples one time, but it was the first time I'd ever made cider that when you crack open a bottle of it after it's, finished all of its fermentations, it actually has a really strong apple smell. The other ones that I've done just kind of smelled alcohol-ish. I mean, they had some apple scent to them, but not like the ones that we made with the crab apples. So I'm hoping, this isn't very much, but I'm hoping it will be enough to kind of help with that a little bit. Oh, and I actually ended up getting almost, just a cup less than 2 gallons of the Honeycrisp juice. So that's awesome. Well, sadly, that didn't work. My juicer did not like those little berries, so we will just give up on that. We got pretty close to a total of 2 gallons. So now I believe that the next thing that we want to do is get the current gravity of it. So let's see. I can't remember, and it doesn't really say if I'm supposed to check the gravity before I add the apples or the sugar, or probably before, or after, I mean. Yeah, I think after. So for a full-bodied apple cider, for 1 gallon of juice, you want 1/3 of a pound of sugar. So we want 2/3 of a pound of sugar. That's a lot of sugar. And 2 Camden tabs. Oh no. My scale is out of batteries. Okay. Well, Alexa, how many cups are in a pound of sugar?
There are about 2.2 cups in a pound of sugar.
All right.
A pound is a unit of measurement for weight, and it is commonly used to measure sugar and other ingredients when baking or cooking. The amount of sugar required for a recipe will be measured in pounds, and this amount will typically be converted to cups to determine...
Alexa, stop. All right, so this is what it is looking like right now. There's, as you can see, a lot of foam on top. And this is kind of one of the reasons that you want to do a primary ferment, is that this all all of the residue that's in this foam will sink to the bottom so it doesn't get into your secondary ferment. All right, so we have almost 2 gallons, so we are going to add just a little under 4 cups of sugar. And then we need 2 Camden tabs. And what Camden tabs do, this is what adds sulfate to wine or any kind of alcohol that you're making if you do this. And the reason you do it is because this is going to kill any of the wild yeast that is in the cider right now. Because if you use wild yeast, it could turn out just fine, or it could turn out really funky flavored. So if you want to kind of guarantee that your hard cider is going to taste good, you don't want to use wild yeast. So this is going to kill all the wild yeast. And then tomorrow, after 24 hours, and this is sat, all of the kind of residues have gone to the bottom, we will add our yeast. So I'm just going to stir this in until all of the sugar is dissolved, and then we will take its gravity and go from there. So to take the gravity, which this tells us how much sugar is in the apple juice when we start, so that when we do our second ferment, we check it on a regular basis until it gets to a certain point, and that will tell us how much alcohol is in our apple cider. So I'm just going to pull some out and put it in this little guy here. And I actually didn't show you what a hydrometer looks like. So it's kind of got this weight thingy at the end of it. And then it has all of these lines and numbers. I don't know if that's focusing on this or not. And we will go into how to read this and how to make sense of it later when we actually have a second number to compare this to. No, don't have quite enough. It needs to be floating. There we go. And then we want to kind of give it a little bit of a twirl just to make sure there aren't any air bubbles on it. And then, as you can see, the years that I did it long time ago, I wrote them down in here. So I'm going to continue to do that. And we are at, foam is causing a bit of a problem here. About 1.08. Maybe even go 8.5. And 0.085. And this is 1124. It has been 10 years since I last made cider that I recorded this in. Like I said, I did make cider in 2020, I know. So it hasn't been quite 10 years since I made it. All right. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see this because the foam is in the way. But get it standing up right here. There we go. So maybe you'll be able to see it. I can't tell from here. So like I said, tomorrow night we will add the yeast to this, and then we will start taking the gravity every day until it reaches, oh, and it is supposed to have a starting gravity of 1.085 to 1.090. So we are perfect. Stir daily. When the ferment reaches 1.040, 3 to 5 days, then we will siphon it off into its secondary fermentation jug, and we'll attach an airlock, and that will probably sit for 3 to 4 weeks until it reaches 1.0. and then it'll get balanced. So this is a bit of a process, and we will come back to this with you once we are doing the next steps. I also forgot to mention that all of the pulp from the apples is going into a pot on the stove. It is quite full right now, so I'm going to have to wait until it gets down a little bit before I add the last bit. And then once it's all softened, I will run it through the food mill and either make more applesauce, not that I need more applesauce, or apple butter. I also do need more apple butter, but we will figure something out. But it's not going to go to waste. I have in the past put it through twice, but it's a lot of work to get it through that second time for not a huge payoff. Whereas if you cook it down and put it through the food mill, you actually get quite a bit of the good pulp left, and with enough juice that it's usable. So that's what we are going to do with that. And unfortunately, what goes through the food mill can't go to the chickens because, like I said, this was 33 pounds of apples, or 30 pounds of apples. And that's just really too many seeds for them to be eating. So it will have to just go on the regular compost pile. Okay, it has been 24-ish hours, so it is time to add the yeast. This is, actually, let me go grab the packet really quick. Or one of the others of it right here. This is called Lalvin champagne yeast. And I'm using champagne yeast because it was actually recommended to me. So if you ever want to get into brewing of any kind, find your local brewery supply store. I almost guarantee that everyone in there is a brewer of some kind, and they geek out on brewing. So they have huge amounts of knowledge. Even if the thing that you want to brew isn't their specialty, they probably still know a lot about it. So anyway, I went to our local brew store when we were living in the Seattle area and told them what I wanted to do. And I'd done a lot of research, but nobody had really talked about the kind of yeast to use. And so that was one of my questions. He's like, oh, definitely. Well, actually, he's like, first of all, do you want to have your cider be sparkling or flat? And I was like, oh, definitely, I want bubbles. And he's like, okay, so then you want to use a champagne yeast because I'm going to have to look up why. He told me at the time, but I can't remember. But he definitely said you want to use a champagne yeast. So that is what this is. And we're just using a single packet of it. Actually, this says wine yeast, but oh no, sparkling wines. Yeah. Vin effervescent. So we are just going to give our cider a stir and stir in the yeast. I have been rehydrating it in just a little bit of warm water for about 20 minutes. This is what the instructions say to do. So let's take a look. So we are not going to measure the gravity today because we don't have any yeast in it. So it probably won't have changed much from yesterday. But as you can see, the layer of foam has significantly decreased. And even though I didn't use any clearing agents, the cider is still, I mean, it's got a dark color, but it's clear, which is great. However, I'm going to stir it because we're supposed to, and kind of get this foam hopefully worked in a little bit so that it can continue to drop the residue to the bottom. Because this has a lot of like apple pulp in it, basically. All right, well, I just realized that I had not turned the camera on, so the yeast is in. I'm trying to remember what I said while I was putting it in. I think I mentioned that, actually, let me go put this in the sink real quick. This one packet of yeast is good for 1 to 6 US gallons. So we have just under 2. So we only need the 1. And yeah, and so now we will check this every day until we will do the gravity. So we'll do our little gravity test and stir it every day until it reaches the 1.04, I think is the gravity that we want. And then it will go into its secondary ferment, which is a carboy with an airlock, and it will ferment there until 1.000. So I will see you back when it is time to move this bad boy into the carboy. Oh, I did want to show you one other thing. I have put the all of the apple scraps through a food mill, or my one that goes onto my KitchenAid, and this is what we have: a very large pot of basically applesauce. So I haven't quite decided yet what I'm gonna do with it. If I'm just gonna leave it as applesauce, maybe put a little cinnamon in it, some sugar. I haven't tasted it yet. And then just jar it up and can it. Or I don't know, what else does one do with applesauce? I'm not actually sure. Other than like make apple butter, but I have so much apple butter on the shelf, I really don't need any more. Anyway, I just wanted to let you guys know that it is definitely worth it to save those scraps and make applesauce out of it, because it does make a lot. And you would just be throwing it away if you didn't do that. Don't worry, this is the Star San. The bottle that it normally comes in sprung a leak somehow and was leaking all over the floor. So I put it into a glass bottle. As you saw, I washed out the carboy here and now have the sanitizing solution in there. We have 4 more parts to this. So we have the tube to get the cider from the bucket into the carboy. We have the lid. I need a cork. One more piece. Let me go find the cork. All right, so cork, it goes in here, and then the airlock little doohickey goes in there, and this goes on top of there. And this is just a siphon so that it starts the flow of the cider. All of these need to be washed and then sanitized. And you'll recall that once you sanitize these things, you do not rinse them with this particular sanitizer. Sometimes sanitizers you definitely need to, but this is not one of them. Actually, we will fill this guy with sanitizer, or with the water that has the sanitizer in it, and that will be our airlock. So you want to be about halfway full. There's actually a little line right here. So you want the water level to be equal on both sides. Put the little cap on. All right. And then I'm just going to swish this around in here. And then I will put it through the spout as well, so it's going through the entire system. But that will take forever to drain all the way, so we will just dump the rest of this out. So the last time that I took the gravity, we were at 1.05. So we should be there or really stinking close. And even if we're not quite there yet, that's fine. I'm okay with that. It is definitely very yeasty. So I'm not going to stir it this time because I don't want all of the sediment on the bottom to get mixed up into it again. Since we are going to move it into the carboy, we want to leave as much of that behind as we possibly can. But let's go ahead and take our measurement here. We are at, oh, actually we are a little, you know what, you're supposed to put this flat. So it's not, oh, it's exactly at 1.0, it's like 1.037 or so. I'll see if I can show it to you without it tipping here. Well, anyway, it's where it's supposed to be. So I'm going to very gently pour this back in. So we do not disturb it too much. And let's get this into the carboy. Okay, it has been a while since I've done this, so I don't entirely precisely remember how this works, but I believe this, no, this goes in here, yes, and the tube goes in here. All right, and oh, I didn't show you, this has a little thing that, so this rests on the bottom and it actually pulls the juice up here, so it keeps it above the sediment line for the most part. All right, let me get you a little closer. So let's see if this works. There we go. I might have to do a couple of pumps here. There we go. You can see it flowing into the carboy now. Simple as that. So this won't take very long. And as soon as it is all in here, we will put the cap on and just wash out the bucket. I'll show you what's in the bottom. I think it's called Lees, L-E-E-S. And there are things you can do with it. I'll have to look up what they are. I remember at one point reading that people like bake with it maybe, or I don't know. That might be totally wrong. Anyway, so I will look it up and let you know what it is, but I'll show you what it looks like. It's kind of slimy and gross, but that's the stuff that we do not want in here. The crazy thing is the sediment will continue dropping to the bottom of this in the carboy as well, so there'll be a whole nother layer of it when we go to bottle this. All right, we have gotten pretty much all of it out. I was starting to get quite a bit of the sediment in here, so I decided to stop. I'm gonna go put this stuff in the sink really quick, hopefully without making a mess. But you can see along with a escapee crabapple, this is the kind of slimy, gooey stuff left at the bottom here. So yeah, that's, we're just gonna dump this out. There's actually not nearly as much as there has been in the past for me, so that's great. All right, I'm gonna go put this in the sink as well. So this is what we're looking like. I do want to give this a quick little taste. It is not gonna taste good, I promise you. but I always think it's interesting to give it a try and see what it's like. Like I said, it smells very yeasty right now. Mm. Oh, actually, it's still really good. It's got a lot. It has a lot of sugar in it still, and definitely a nice strong apple flavor. And you get that little bit of hint of alcohol in the back. So it's on its way. And like I said, now we are just going to plop this guy right here like this and seal that in. As this is fermenting, this will bubble to let the air out without letting any new oxygen or things inside of it. So we want to keep this as sealed as possible. Typically it's taken somewhere between 2 to 6 weeks, somewhere around there for it to be done. However, I have also let a batch of cider sit in a carboy for like 3 months, and it was fine when I bottled it. So it's pretty forgiving from at least my experience. Yeah, so we are just going to set this in a place that it can stay shaded, not in direct sunlight, and check on it here in a little while. Cheers.